Sten, we're live.
And nothing like a little Stevie Ray Vaughan to start our show. And our guest in just a few minutes is going to be Stevie Ray Erickson. No, Steve Erickson will be here in just a few minutes. Welcome to In The Dugout. This is Mike Stenhouse, your host. Today, we're going to have two guests, two really, I think, important guests for us. First, we're going to have Steve Erickson. Steve was a former board member of the Rhode Island Board of Elections, and he's going to take us through step by step the mail ballot voting process that has caused so much misinformation, maybe legitimate concerns, both here in Rhode Island and across the country. It's certainly been a new phenomenon, and not everybody's comfortable with it. Not as comfortable that it's been done in a fully legit way, but we're going to go through a step-by-step process about how it's done in Rhode Island shortly. Second half of the show, we have former Providence Mayor, former United States Ambassador Joseph Paolino is going to join us. He issued an opinion piece yesterday about remedies, game-changing remedies for the Rhode Island economy. And we're going to analyze with Joe his opinion piece, and then we'll follow up with him and just ask him a few general questions about goings on in the state and in the city of Providence. And as many of you know, Joe is pretty much openly out there, and we'll confirm with him that he is interested in running for governor here in Rhode Island in 2022. So he's a big name that could really change the dynamics of a future gubernatorial race. So we'll be hearing from him in about a half hour. One thing just as follow. So yesterday, so we're going to continue today in our first half of our show with sort of under the election integrity moniker. Yesterday, we looked at national issues. We looked at, we had a guest on from the Pennsylvania state legislature that are having hearings there, and there are lawsuits there, there are resolutions there are paths that they are pursuing, and we wanted to find out what was true, what was false about what was being said about what was happening in Pennsylvania. Today, just quickly before we get to Steve Erickson, I mean, Rhode Island native Michael Flynn, General Flynn, who many of you know was first indicted and then pleaded guilty and then withdrew as guilty, then Trump pardoned him just in the last week or so. He put out a call today because of all what he feels is election fraud throughout the country, and I'm sure specifically dealing with the presidential election. He called for the president to suspend the Constitution, impose martial law, and have a brand new election. Like, wow. Now, the only reason I bring that up, let's bring on Steve Erickson first, and then we'll get his opinion on that. So let's bring in Judge Erickson, and I think maybe that would be the proper name for you, right, Judge? Is that your highest ranking title, Judge?
Well, I'm wearing my cap here.
All right.
I was going to wear my robes.
Oh, all right. So I've got my Harvard hat on today. What cap do you have for In The Dugout?
This is Old Colony Railroad, ran from Newport Fall River.
Old Colony Railroad.
Old Colony Railroad. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. That's a piece of Rhode Island history right there.
Yes, it is. That's
all right. So Judge Erickson, that would be your highest. All right. So
yeah.
So we're bringing you on exactly because of what we heard from Michael Flynn. I mean,
by the way, trivia piece.
Yeah.
You want a piece of trivia?
Yeah.
I beat his mother by 2 votes for state rep in 1978.
Former state rep, Steve Erickson. Okay, didn't have that. So you are a 20-year judge in Rhode Island District Court. You were a 6-year member, board member of the Rhode Island Board of Elections through June of this year.
8
Now
years in
you're
the General Assembly, 4 years in the Executive
state
Office.
rep, and now you do some teaching at Roger Williams Law School and Brown
Yep.
Medical School. So quite
Yep.
a list of credentials. You're also quite outspoken. You
Never-
and I have
Not-
engaged in some good hand-to-hand combat on social media, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But that's our job, is to put it out there and advocate for our positions passionately. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Anytime.
All right, so Michael Flynn, the reason I bring it up, I mean, that's a crazy call for
Yeah.
bend the Constitution, impose martial law, have a re-election. But it goes to point out the level of distrust, rightfully or wrongfully, with what happened in this past year's elections. And whether you agree there's been integrity in elections or not, you do recognize that there's a lot of people who have a lot of distrust of the system right now.
Well, first of all, let me start out by saying we just had the best, safest, most secure, transparent election in the United States in this country's history. We have
Now,
never.
how can you
had a
speak for
better
the United States? How do you know that?
Because I watch everywhere. That's still part of my job, for the things I do and the people I work with, to be aware of what's going on. And I can tell you that throughout the country, we have not had a better operation of an election ever. And that's
Wow.
because of
All right.
hundreds of thousands of people, Republicans, Democrats, elected Republican officials, elected Democratic officials, volunteers, poll watchers, everybody throughout the system. It's been the most transparent.
All right, how about in Rhode Island? Did Rhode Island have a
Absolutely. Best election ever. We've spent years getting ready for this election.
All right, we're going to go through this step by step
Hey,
in just a
sure.
minute.
I knew
Okay.
I'd start out with that. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's your opinion, and I'm not so much here to debate you. I'm just here to
Okay.
ask questions.
Fire
Maybe
away.
but before we get into the questions, there was an incident that happened. And again, this is the kind of thing that feeds into, you do recognize there is distrust. Even if your view is there was a safe and fair election, you do recognize there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of distrust out there, right? You do
I
recognize
think
that?
there is a lot of misinformation out there. There are people have trouble understanding how the election process works. And
Good.
because it's somewhat, it is arcane, to say the least, people are distrustful of results they don't like.
All right, so a candidate for state senator, Charles Callanan,
Yep.
was one of the candidates who had a huge lead after the in-person ballots, after the emergency ballots were counted.
The red mirage. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then the if you want to call it the blue wave of mail ballots
wave.
came in.
Yep.
and completely overturned his results. Now he apparently put up a post that showed some of the mail ballots.
Yep.
That had obviously mismatched signatures on them. Our research has since determined that none of those ballots were counted, that they were all denied because of that mismatch. So
System worked.
system worked on those cases that he put up. But
Yep.
Facebook took down his post.
Yep.
Apparently after the urging, he was contacted by the Rhode Island Board of Elections to take down that post, which showed images that the Board of Election itself put out. He took those
Yep.
images from the Board of Elections. So why would the Board of Elections ask him to take down his post, and I assume contact Facebook to compel them to take down his post? This is the kind of thing that feeds into the distrust. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I can't answer for the Board of Elections because, as you know, the governor decided she didn't like me being there anymore. So she replaced me back in July. So I can't really speak for the board. But the fact is, when people can have public information, but that doesn't mean you put it out there in a Facebook or Twitter environment where people have your name, address, phone number, maybe your email. Remember, one of the things that the board did, and this was something I helped do back at the beginning of the process this year, was to create a system so that people were encouraged to have their email address or their phone number, to have some personal identification information on that envelope. But now that envelope contains that public information, and you put it up in a post like that, and you take those people who who may have simply made a mistake, and you suddenly they have an anti-doxing
All right,
policy.
so you're saying it was all about privacy because the phone number's on the ballot.
I am almost sure that it's because of the privacy information, the private information. You don't want your phone number out there on the internet. You don't
Yeah,
want.
you're right. Just because it is publicly available doesn't mean it should be publicly flaunted.
That's right.
I would agree with that too. All right. So I'm going to accept that as an answer for now. The fact that none of those ballots, per our research, were actually accepted and counted,
System worked.
that in that case, in those cases, yes. All right, let's go through the system. So first, do you agree with so we've had a philosophy here when it comes to voting, that it should be easy to vote, but hard to cheat. Do you agree with that?
It already is. It's not easy enough to vote, and it's plenty hard to cheat.
All right, so you agree with that premise, right?
Well, that's already the case.
Yep, all right, but still, you agree. Okay, so voting is a right, right?
Absolutely.
Should it be a mandate?
Mandate, should we require people to vote?
Yeah.
No, we encourage people to vote. We want to have a system that's safe, secure, and effective. That's what we have.
But if people are uninterested and unwilling to cast a ballot, like people with Alzheimer's or whatnot, should the state be going into nursing homes and compelling their spouses to fill out a ballot for the person who's ill?
I have no knowledge that that's ever happened.
All right, but if I'm just using it as an example, should the state go to that length to encourage someone to vote?
I'm not really a fan of hypotheticals in this case. I'll
Okay,
give you a
fair
real
enough.
example.
Fair
My
enough.
wife, as I've mentioned before, is disabled, and
Sorry to hear.
she used to be the internal audit director for a Fortune 500 company before she became disabled. I'm now her full-time caregiver, and you know what? She wanted to vote. She voted in the Republican primary. You know why? She wanted to vote against Trump twice.
Okay. All right. Let's
When
move
I
on.
asked her, which primary do you want to vote in? She said, I want to, you know what? Okay, so
Fair enough.
So there you go. Now, does somebody with a mild cognitive concern have a right to vote? Absolutely. Does somebody with a mental illness have a right to vote?
Right.
Absolutely.
But if they show no initiative or interest in voting, should the state twist their arm to vote?
In 1971,
Yes, just yes or no. We got to move on. Yes or no?
I don't think that is,
Okay.
That's a hypothetical I'm not going to answer.
Okay. All right.
I'm in
Let's
favor
move
of
on.
encouraging
Let's-
people to vote.
All right, let's move on. So as you and I agreed, we're going to go through a whole bunch of questions,
Go ahead.
quick answers, and then go back and discuss the ones that
Sure.
pop out at us.
Okay.
We've heard all this about Dominion machines and what machines, what software does Rhode Island use, the Board of Elections, to count votes?
We use ES&S, which is one of the three major companies.
ES&S, what is it called?
ES&S, ES&S, Electronic Systems and something.
And is that a hardware and software system?
Yes,
Okay,
it was
All right.
purchased by the Secretary of State and implemented by the Board of Elections.
okay. What confidence do you have that the state's voter rolls, that's maintained by a different office, the Secretary of State,
Secretary of State does that.
are fully accurate?
No voter roll in the history of the United States has ever been fully accurate.
Okay,
It can't be by definition,
okay.
because, people die.
Yeah, all right. So what is your
People
judgment
register.
on the state of Rhode Island's voter roll based on your experience there?
I think our voter rolls are reasonably well maintained. They could be better maintained, but they do not provide an opportunity for
Okay.
any significant fraudulent activity.
All right,
It's just not
Yeah.
possible, given the number of safeguards that exist in the system.
all right. Do you agree, prior to this year with the pandemic and the rule changes that happened this year, do you agree with Rhode Island's voter ID laws as they existed prior to 2020? That includes voter ID in person, and that includes the witness or notary set stamps on mail ballots.
Two questions. One is the voter ID. I did not support voter ID as an individual when
Okay.
it came across, because there is no evidence that it in any way affects the legitimacy of
All right.
votes. Okay, there's no evidence of that at all. So personally,
How about
I was
as an election official?
but as an election official, I was fully in favor of enforcing it as it was written and as the regulations we developed to allow it to be implemented. And
All right, what about the
frankly, if
mail
you're gonna
ballot
have a voter
requirement?
ID law, Rhode Island is one of the best because it allows a wide range. You know,
Yep.
you were talking yesterday about
Yeah, some
Pennsylvania.
states are unconstitutional, yeah.
Well, yeah, and the reason Pennsylvania was unconstitutional, if you read the case like I did, you'd find out it was unconstitutional because they only had 57 offices in the entire Commonwealth that allowed people to get an official government ID. They didn't allow any other type of ID to be used. And so it was extremely restrictive in terms
Okay,
of
fair
what it
enough.
is. Rhode Island's law is much more broad-based, so it allows a variety of IDs that you would normally use in any other circumstance in our society.
All right, what about the witness or notary requirements that formerly existed for mail ballots?
I think personally, they're obsolete.
So you don't agree in any third-party validation of a mail ballot?
I didn't say that. Signature matching is the best system we have to validate. The two
Okay,
witnesses. No, you know, let me ask you a question. Mind if I ask you a question?
shoot.
When's the last time you sat through a certification of an election at the Board of Elections?
I'm here to find out from you. I'm not the
No?
expert.
So have you ever sat through a certification at the
No,
Board of
no,
Elections?
no.
Do you know when the first time I sat through a certification at the Board of Elections was? 1969. When I was
All right,
18 years old.
but that answer the question though. Should, you know,
Sure.
do you think
It's
they're
obsolete.
obsolete? It doesn't matter. I'm not, this is here for your opinion, not
Okay.
mine.
Okay, I think it's obsolete because the signature matching process is much more efficient. The two witnesses, nobody, you know, people don't challenge those. Well, once in a while they do. The governor challenged a lot of them, but nobody, you know, the Republican Party didn't go in there and challenge signature matching.
So when we weakened, I'm going to use the word weakened because I'm not sure I agree with you on that. But when we weakened mail ballot third-party validations this year, because supposedly because of the pandemic, you didn't think that weakened them.
Do you know how many levels of certification we have? I'm sure you don't. So here's the answer to that question. That we have about 3 different levels of certification on signature matching, starting with the machines now. And then we have individual reviews by pairs that are observable who can review it. The attorneys for the parties can review those signatures, and then they can make written objection to each one of those ballots, which then goes before the full board if there's a continuing objection. There are 3
Well,
levels.
how can there be an objection if interested parties, bipartisan, aren't there to review the ballots?
But they are there. They have.
No, they weren't there this year. I've talked to party officials who were not allowed to review the signatures this year.
They are allowed by law to be there to review the signatures. And you know what?
That's what the law says, but it didn't happen this year.
They don't show up 20 days in advance. Nobody shows up 20 days in advance. They wait until the last minute when most of the ballots have already been reviewed. And they do that because, you know, frankly, this is about.
All right, so you're saying the party officials had an opportunity to show up but didn't?
That's been the case every year I was on the Board of Elections. Every year.
This is what we're here to find out. We're here to find out what the other side of the story is. Okay.
Every year, the Republican Party, every year the candidates, individual candidates for legislature have an opportunity to review the mail ballot signatures. Every year they can sit down right there. Are there changes this year because of the pandemic? Absolutely. Was there still a process for signature validation? Of course there was. That's how it works. And
all right. So
that's why it's safe and secure.
So this year, as you know, through a consent decree, through a lawsuit that I believe was completely contrived, and then an agreement that was pre-arranged, without legislative approval, we changed our voting laws this year to do unsolicited mass mail ballot applications to everyone on the voter roll. So
that's not the way it happened.
It is the way it happened.
No, it's not the way it happened.
It is the way it happened.
No, it's
The
not.
legislature denied the legislation.
That's not the way it happened.
What didn't happen? What am I wrong on? Tell me where I'm going wrong.
Well, first of all, the Secretary of State set out the mail ballot applications, and she believes she has the authority to do that. And there's nothing in the law that says she can't do that. So she could send out the mail ballot. There's nothing that says she can, nothing that says she can't. So it wasn't part of the consent decree.
So the consent decree was on the signatures, yes.
Was on the, and that's because, and by the way, the Board of Elections has authority to do that. Because the general.
That's not what the Supreme Court's been saying recently.
Well, no, that's exactly what the Supreme Court.
No, the Supreme Court's saying those kind of changes have to come from the legislature.
Are you familiar with the Bonanno case?
No, but I'm familiar
well,
with the
you should
rulings
be
that have
familiar
happened in
with
the last few
Bonanno
months.
case. because the Board of Elections has authority granted to it by the General Assembly to make whatever changes are necessary in order to
Okay, that's an
effectuate
interesting
the
point.
election process. And in the Buonanno case, the Rhode Island Supreme Court upheld that provision and said that the Board of Elections could fashion whatever appropriate remedy it considered under the circumstances to resolve the
All
problem.
right, so that's an interesting, so you're saying Rhode Island legislature did give those powers to the Board of
Absolutely.
Elections?
Absolutely, the Board of
All right.
Elections has
Interesting.
plenary authority. It says without limitation. That's what Title 17 says.
So you even believe the process to change those voting laws was legitimate?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
the Board of Elections under Title 17 has the authority without limitation to make changes as necessary in order to effectuate
Per the state legislature.
per the state legislature
Okay.
and validated by the Rhode
We'll
Island
look,
Supreme Court
we'll
in
check that out.
Buonanno. In the
All right.
Buonanno case, I can give you the citation.
Oh, yeah, good info. Good info. Okay. See,
But you know, people don't read the Buonanno case. They don't look at Title 17.
that's why you and I are talking. People
They have
don't understand
opinions.
this stuff.
They have opinions without facts.
I would assume then that you would think that do you think the mass mail balloting, unsolicited of ballot applications should be codified into law and continue?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Just like
Now,
in all those
I know
states
some
that-
states that do this only they don't send out to everybody who's on the voter rolls, just those who voted in either the last or one of the last two elections. Do you think
That's
that
discriminatory.
everybody on the voter roll should get one of
Yep.
these? Okay,
You can't discriminate like that.
not discrimination.
Yeah, it's not violation of equal protection.
Everybody still has a right to go to the polls, don't they?
Yeah, but if you can't send out mail ballots to one group of people, whoever you want. If you're going to send out mail ballot applications, you got to send them out to everybody, unless there's a reason such as what happened in this case. You know, in the primary, 100,000 of them came back to the Secretary of State's office and they didn't get sent applications for the general election. So that's what you do. If you have a legitimate reason to not send it out because you don't think the person is living there anymore, is deceased, because you got the mail back, then you don't send them out. But you can't say 2 years, 4 years. That's a violation of HAVA. That's a violation of federal law.
All right, so we're getting through here. We got about 8 or 10 minutes left.
Let's go.
All right, quick. So do you have any data? How many actual ballot applications were sent out?
Well, I'm assuming we sent out probably about, I don't have the actual number. I think it's between 600,000 and 700,000.
All right. And do you know how many were returned with a request for a mail ballot?
Let's see, there were 521,000 people voted, 201,000 on election day, 170,000 by mail, and 150,000 by emergency in person, which some people incorrectly.
All right. So I'm trying to get I know that. So of those 170,000 voted by mail, there were probably more than that actually requested a mail ballot and actually never completed. Do we know how many more actually requested a mail ballot but then never voted?
Well, I have the numbers for that for the primary.
Okay.
There were 155,000. Well, they sent out, let's see, mail ballots received, mail ballot applications received 155,000 and 144,000 were sent to voters. The other 7,000 or 8,000 or whatever it was, there maybe 11,000 were disqualified for one reason or another. So.
All right. All right. How many of those mail ballots that were sent back, that people tried to vote via mail, were rejected for, like we talked earlier, we know at least a number of them were, how many were rejected for whatever reason?
Well, I can give you some numbers from the primary. I don't have the finals from the general election, but it's an example, and it's sort of an example. So of the 7,000 that were rejected in the presidential primary, because I did a whole study on this, 7,000 were rejected, 234 applications weren't signed. About 1,700 were received after the deadline. We had 216 bad signature matches, 155 with bad personal information, 2,000 voters requested ballots for the wrong primary. In other words, they were in one party or the other one.
Okay.
So
that was in the primary. All right.
Yeah, so we're looking at probably comparable numbers.
All right, but most of the controversies around the general election. If you come up with that data, would you maybe we'll have you back on the show again? All right.
We're probably talking 300 or 400 that were, bad signature matches.
Out of maybe 200,000 total or something.
Whatever.
Okay.
The fraud rate's been documented at 0.0006%.
What do you mean by fraud rate?
In other words, the number of documented actual cases of fraud is less than 0.0006% of the population. And that's
Well, we know, I mean, we have
minuscule.
28 ballots, at least 28 that I'm aware of. And it's just a sample of, I'm sure, of people who tried to defraud the system. Now the system caught them.
No. Don't use the word fraud.
Well, if there's one signature there and
No,
it's not even someone else signed it there, that's fraud.
Fraud is a legal concept. And
Okay.
when you use the word fraud, you have to mean fraud. You have to mean an intentional and deliberate effort.
Yeah.
No,
That's what
and
I'm talking
not
about.
the case. That's not the case.
If I'm not Joe Schmo and I sign some signature, that's not fraud?
What if I have a power of attorney for my wife and I sign it for her?
Okay, well, that's not fraud, but what if I didn't?
It's also not allowed. It's also disallowed
Okay.
because the statute says the person has to sign it themselves. But that's not fraud. Just because there's a difference in the signatures.
What's the
doesn't mean
problem
it's
with the
a
word
fraud.
fraud, Steve? Why does everybody go berserk? We know people try to defraud
Because they're-
anything from
because
Medicare to Medicaid. Well, why do you guys get all upset at the word fraud and claim
Because
it doesn't
fraud
exist?
has a specific legal meaning, and there's a reason why all those Trump attorneys don't use the word fraud in court, because they know they're going to get iced if they use that type of a term in court. That they can talk
All right,
about
well, you're
fraud
making a
all they
legal
want and
distinction,
keep our
but to the
system.
citizen, it's fraud if you
No, it's
misrepresent
not
your
fraud.
identity.
It is not
Well,
fraud.
legally, maybe not, but
No.
what is the term then? What
Well,
is the
how
term?
else are you going to define fraud except legally? And that's
Well,
what fraud
Then
means.
what is the term? If you misrepresent who you
Errors.
are, what is that?
Mistakes. If you
A
if you sign-
mistake?
if you sign for your wife, it's a mistake. If you sign for your son who went to college.
What
and
if
you
I
thought
sign
you
for
could sign
somebody
that,
who has no relation to me? What is
you
that?
haven't proved that. You haven't proved any of
Well,
that.
what is that? What would you call that if it was true?
99.999% of those cases turn out to be errors that people legitimately make because they don't understand how the
You
process.
don't know that.
works. Yes, we do.
You
There are
don't
studies-
know that.
Absolutely, we know that.
You
We
don't
know-
think people try to defraud the system.
I didn't say that. I said it is minuscule.
All right. All right, senior citizen home. There's another point of contention, right?
Now define that. Are you talking about nursing homes or assisted living? Because they're different.
All right, well, you tell me the difference. So let's talk nursing
The
home
difference is
first.
this, in nursing.
Well, I know the
homes-
difference, but I'm talking about let's
No,
talk nursing homes.
That's the difference. In nursing homes, you have to have a bipartisan pair. That's been the law for decades in this state, that you don't go into a nursing home. And
Now, I
call
was
it-
told that didn't happen this year either.
What happened
Was I
this
told
year-
correctly?
What happened this year is that the bipartisan pairs were designated out of the staff at the facility because of the COVID restrictions. And that's
Not through the official parties.
they didn't. Well, you know what? You know what the biggest problem is? The Republican Party doesn't have any people to be in those bipartisan pairs.
Well, they
Okay.
claim they weren't even notified of this.
Because the board made a decision that it was going to use nursing home staff. And if you think the nursing home staff was going in there and changing people's votes in nursing homes.
Well,
I
we
think
have
you've got a
anecdotal stories of
huge
them
level
telling
of
them who to vote for. Yes,
No,
we do
they
have those
don't do
anecdotal
that.
stories.
They do not do that. They do not do that. Those are just.
Now who's being naive?
That's not true.
Now
That's
who's
just not
being
true.
naive?
I used to do nursing home ballots. I know how it works.
Yeah, well,
I
you were
know
probably being
that's not
watched
the
by
case.
somebody. Now there's
No.
nobody there to watch anyone.
There's a team of people from the nursing home, the staff of the.
So
nursing
was the law changed or did the Board of Elections change
The
that policy
board
on its own?
used its plenary authority under Title 17 to allow for the creation of bipartisan pairs from the staff at the nursing homes.
So it sounds to me that law has to be changed. If the legislature gave full power to the Board of Election, do whatever the hell it wanted to weaken election integrity and have the people of Rhode Island have this level of distrust, then I think that law has got to be changed.
That's only been the case for 70 years or so.
We've never had this level of mail ballots before.
Oh yeah.
No,
Talk
have
about
we?
1958. You want to talk about 1958?
We've had this level of mail ballots before?
You mean when the Rhode Island Supreme Court
170,000
tossed out all the
ballots
mail
coming in?
ballots? When the Rhode Island Supreme Court tossed out all the mail ballots, I'm sorry, it was 1956, all the mail ballots in order to put, Christel Sesto lost the election? Look it up.
All right, was there any ballot curing that's allowed or do you know that
That was
happened?
my idea.
What's that?
I proposed the regulation to allow curing of ballots. It's a great idea.
How does that happen? How does that happen evenly, fairly?
Because anybody whose ballot is rejected gets, if they put their phone number or their email or we send a mail, so the board either sends mail or calls or emails the person and says, your ballot was rejected because there's a signature problem or there's some other issue. And so you have an opportunity to come in and cure that, to make sure that that ballot is your ballot. And you know what that means? That means legal ballots by legal voters are legally counted. And who can be opposed to that?
Well, if it's done fairly and evenly, but if
Well, that's
only
what it's done.
but in
Everybody has the same-
other states, it was only apparently done in Democratic districts and not in
No, that's not
Republican
true. It's up to the
districts.
counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
So,
No, again, you're wrong. Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth runs their elections by counties, like Bucks County and so forth, unlike Rhode Island.
well, all right, I should say counties.
So each county in Pennsylvania makes their own rules. And that's the way it is in like 48 out of the 50 states. The counties or local governments run the elections. Rhode Island is unique. I think only Rhode Island, Hawaii, maybe Delaware have statewide election systems. And so what we did was we had a uniform system. In Pennsylvania, each county can decide whether or not it's going to allow everyone, Republican and Democrat alike, to cure their ballots if there's a problem with the mail ballots. And
so you could have disparities within the same state is what you're saying.
that doesn't matter.
Well, but it could happen, right? Whether it matters or not is for someone else to decide upon.
There are some
How many
states don't even use the
ballots were
same
cured
voters.
in Rhode Island? I don't care about Pennsylvania. How many ballots were cured in Rhode Island?
I don't know. Probably, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred.
Is that data out there somewhere?
Nah, somewhere.
All right, listen, our time is up. I got Joe Paolino on hold. Let's do this again, all right? We haven't had
Anytime. I love
let's
it.
do it again. And would you object to if I brought on a party official or somebody who disagrees with you? Can we have you guys go back
You
and
bet.
forth?
You bet.
Yeah,
I'd
you're a
love
good
to.
sport.
I am.
You are a good sport. Thank you for that, Steve. We appreciate your time. You taught me some things today. We may disagree on some policy and issues here.
The Bornato case, okay?
All right, but I learned some things today, and I thank you for that.
Okay,
Okay, Steve, thank you.
fun. Thanks.
Okay, let's bring in Mayor Joe Paolino. Well, first, oh gosh. Larry, I see we have another high VIP guest. Do we need to get to him first?
If you want to say hello to the judge, let's bring him in very quickly. I don't know if he just wants to listen or not. So,
all right, let's unmute Judge Flanders. I see you're on the line. Oh, I guess he's gone.
oh, we lost him.
All right,
It's
let's
okay.
bring in Joe Paolino.
We have high-profile viewers and listeners of our show, Stan. Here comes Mayor Paolino.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Ambassador. Whatever. What should we call you?
Joe.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good. How you been, Mike?
Good, good. Well, I've appeared
When
on
did you graduate Harvard?
what year? 1980.
1980.
You got a cap to wear on In the Dugout with me?
No, I went to Harvard. I got my master's at Harvard, but I went
All
to
right.
I did it the easy way. I went to the extension school, but it took me 7 years. But I got my degree.
I don't think there's much easy at Harvard, to tell you the truth. So
I got it when I was mayor of Providence.
you did while you were mayor. Wow, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, you've been kind enough to have me on your shows many times. You're in the Arena show over the years. Now I have it in the Dugout show, so it's kind of a cousin of each other, right? So,
Great. Good to be with you.
all right, Joe. So you and I have been talking about getting together on the show anyway, on your show, my show. And what caught my attention was your opinion piece that appeared yesterday in Go Local Providence, entitled, you co-wrote it with Gary Sass, former Director of Administration for Governor Kucheri. The title, Game Changers Needed to Sustain Post-COVID-19 Recovery. So let me just have you give a quick summary of your points, and then we'll dig in and go through it in a little more detail.
I mean, look, we're going through some tough times right now, but we have to do everything we can right now for small business and for families. So many restaurants are out of business, people are unemployed, and we have to be like a laser just working on that. But at the same time, Mike, I think the state needs to work on a bigger picture of what's going to happen in the future. We have to support the industries that we have. Why don't we just like piggyback next to with Boston and Cambridge and life sciences and biotech, and those are areas that we need to get involved in that really the state hasn't been involved in the past. And I think we have to get more aggressive on that.
So you're saying they, like we think of the 128 technology loop, right? And you're saying they've been successful by doing certain things, and we should. You mean piggyback or emulate?
I'm sorry?
You mean piggyback or emulate what they've done?
Whatever we can do, let's work with them, even and also with digital technology. We should be getting involved in that. What Jeff Grabowski did with the super wind terminal in Block Island for wind energy. There's so much that we can be doing here that I don't know if we have in the past. I feel that if we ever had, let's say, high-speed rail, true high-speed rail, like they have in Asia and in Europe, bullet trains going right to Boston, try to get there in 15, 20 minutes. You know what the kind of boom that would be? Now, it'll take a number of years to do that, but you have to start now. And I think with Biden in the White House, there'll be an infrastructure bill. And if they can do high-speed rail as part of that, he's a big train guy, that could be helpful. But there are so many people that live in Boston, that work in Providence, and people in Providence that work in Boston. We have to use the strength of Boston to help us here in Providence.
You don't think we can survive on our own?
No, I don't think we can survive on our own. Just like Stamford, Connecticut can't survive without New York being so close to them. So we're kind of like a baby brother to Boston. There's nothing wrong in that. Let's take advantage of that. We're between Connecticut and Boston. Let's make it happen. I think we could do that.
All right. In your piece with Gary Sass, you mentioned this is an unprecedented opportunity coming out of hopefully soon the pandemic to address long-standing economic deficiencies. What in your view are those long-standing economic deficiencies? Are they what you just said, or is it failure to do the things you just said, or is it something else?
Well, I think infrastructure is going to be critical, and there'll be an infrastructure bill coming from Washington soon. I think we need to piggyback on that. We're doing some of that now with a lot of the school rebuilding that's going on. Interest rates are the lowest they've ever been. Now is the time to do a lot of refinancing of bonds for all the cities and towns and for the state. And let's use some public works projects to get people going. But what I was talking about before of what the connection and the relationship we have with Boston and trying to bring life sciences, digital technology, biotech, that's big. You know, a lot of people don't recognize that in West Greenwich at, I think it's Wellgen, they are the manufacturer for the vaccine or for the drug that treats people with rheumatoid arthritis. It's right here in Rhode Island. Now, just think if we could try to get more here. They're overbuilt in Boston.
We have the workforce to support that.
Well, I think we could. The key we have to do is keep brain power in Rhode Island. We need brain power here. The graduates from Brown University and URI and the other universities, when these people graduate, we don't want them leaving. We need them to stay here. You know, years ago, a friend of mine was.
Well, isn't that the catch?
Well, it should be. Let me just tell you, a friend of mine
All right.
years ago was in Boston, and he was Kevin White was the mayor, and Kevin White said, "Young man, what are you going to do now since you graduated to law school?" So I'm going to move to Atlanta. He said, "Why are you going to go there?" He said, "Well, that's where the growth is." And he poked him in the chest. He says, "We produce brain power in Boston, and you wait and you watch and you see what happens. We're going to be the hub of brain power." Well, why can't we be that in Rhode Island? It seems like every time there's a governor, things change. Everybody wants to put their own imprint, and we don't have anything that takes us for a long time. And that's something that I think we need to work on.
All right, I'm going to circle back to that later, the brain power, but I want to get to some other parts of your article first. So you mentioned most economists, you mentioned Rhode Island's high level of employment in low wage industries. We agree with that. That's why our unemployment rate suffered so much. It's probably why we're the first in and last out of these recessions or these problems. Agree?
We've always been that way. It's terrible.
Yeah, and that's because of the susceptibility of low wage jobs and low wage industries. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but you talk about also a K-shaped recovery. You say most economists see a K-shaped recovery. Most economists I speak to on my side of the conservative side don't see that. I think, is that really what economists believe, or is that just a left-wing talking point to belittle Trump's accomplishments with the economy?
Well, first of all, I don't want to take anything away from President Trump, but President Trump was in a debt spending economy. That's just a fact. We have
Yeah, too much debt. Yeah, I agree.
Debt. And look, when George Bush first of all, when Bill Clinton left office, he left $150 billion surplus. When George Bush Jr. was president, he had a $6 billion cumulative deficit. Today it's close to $30 trillion.
Now we're spending money like crazy. It's terrible. Yeah.
We sure are. But right now, I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to. I think what President Trump did when this pandemic first happened was important. I think he had to pump that money out there. I think they're going to have to do that again. But you're going to see probably a lot of tax raises take place, which I'm not happy about. That's going to hurt this part of the country, but it's probably going to happen.
So you lay out, I'm just going to quickly go through them. One, infrastructure and capital investing. We've talked a little bit about that.
Yep.
Two, digital access, digital technology access and equity. What do you mean by that?
Well, tell me, why couldn't we have free Wi-Fi throughout this entire state? Every community, every neighborhood, every business district, just a small thing like that. Why can't we, a small state like Rhode Island, be able to provide that? And we don't.
Well, I think philosophically, the question is, do we want the government to control our access and provide Wi-Fi? And so do we want to leave that to the free market to do that? I think I agree with the goal that everybody should have access, but who should be doing it? The government or the free market?
I think it's an investment. I don't think that it's spending. I think it's an investment.
Investment in what? In private enterprise to provide it, or investment in government to provide it?
If government is investing monies to put free Wi-Fi throughout the state, why would you object to that? Why do you think?
But by who? Who's putting it out? Is the government operating the Wi-Fi, or is private industry operating the Wi-Fi?
If there's going to be an infrastructure bill coming out, let's dedicate those dollars to do that. Why would you be against that, Mike?
I'm just saying, but who would do it?
Well, tell me, I don't know who's going to do it. They put.
Well, it matters who does it to me. It matters if the government is operating Wi-Fi for everybody or whether the free enterprise is subsidized to provide it. That's a big difference to me.
Mike, let me explain me.
We've seen the government's success in running, all kinds of departments. Are we going to have a department of Wi-Fi now?
If let's talk about free enterprise and what government's role and the private sector role. Sometimes, especially during tough times that we're in right now, you got to straddle the fence and be able to take care of both sides. It's not black and white. If you're not gray, if you don't have somewhat of a gray philosophy where you can be able to be flexible in political leadership, then you're in the wrong job. So don't be so stringent and say, oh, private sector should do that. Well, tell me what private sector company is going to do it. A private sector company will do it if they have a contract.
So I'm just asking, you're advocating for a department of Wi-Fi within the government.
The only one that's going to give out I'm not saying the department.
Well, it would have to be, right?
Why?
Well, if the government's going to be one actually providing all this Wi-Fi, then you're going to have a department to manage it and operate it, right?
No, I think you'd have the private sector would take it over.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying.
Somebody's going to have to pay for it.
Okay. Oh, then we are saying the same thing.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So you're just saying government should subsidize the private sector to provide it.
I think government should invest the money to get it done, and then the private sector takes over.
All right, I think we're probably largely in agreement there. Okay. And maybe I just misunderstood what you were saying. I apologize. One thing you say, I absolutely agree with. Only productive enterprises create jobs and wealth, and states will be competing to provide the most productive environment for these enterprises. You're right. You can't have great jobs without great companies, right?
When I look at Rhode Island and I see that how lucky we are to have Narragansett Bay, and that's great. I think what they did with the wind farms is wonderful. I drive into Providence and I see Allen's Avenue as a junkyard, all scrap metal yards over there. That area should be aggressively looked at by, I think, state economic development people. And quite frankly, take it by eminent domain. and let's build something that's going to be good and complement the rest of the city and the state.
Your third item of prescription is enhance Rhode Island's public schools and higher education institutions. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I believe in local schools, public schools, Catholic schools, charter schools, all schools that give you good education. And if you're not giving good education to your kids, then you have failed. I feel so bad in Providence that the school system, I feel bad that it had to come to this point. They took the school system away from the city. And now the state's running the school system. That's not what government should be doing. They should be giving better education. But if you look at the charter schools and how well they're doing, well, I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of a good Catholic school. I'm in good favor of a Hebrew school. Any school that's out there where they're getting good results, I am in favor of. And I think that can happen in the public school system too.
I think it can too. I'm a graduate of Cranston High School East, which was a great public school back when I went there. I
know,
don't.
but public education is so different than when you and I were growing up and going to school. The cities and the states are so diverse. You have a lot of new immigrants here. It is so. I said to somebody one day, I said, the schools today, you have one white teacher. She's got 30 kids in the class. 29 of them are all minority, all speaking all different languages. It's tough to get the cultures to work with each other. You need smaller class sizes if you're going to do it. That's why the charter schools have done well. They have small class sizes.
Can I ask you a really tough question?
Yeah, ask.
So I'm not sure if you know, but we have been huge proponents for all of the above school choice,
Okay.
charter schools, public school choice, private school choice, with private school choice obviously being the most controversial, where in that scenario, some amount of public funding would go towards a private school tuition of the family's choice, with the theory that as a taxpayer, doesn't matter who's educating our kids as long as they get a good education, as long as parents are satisfied with the school their kids go to, rather than be forced to go to a school when they can't afford to go anywhere else. Do you support private school choice?
Private school what?
Private school choice, where some level of public funding would follow the student to a private school, Catholic school, Jewish school, just like you mentioned, of their family's choice.
I haven't thought of it that way. I'll tell you how I have thought of it though. I've thought of it where you have probably some of the best private schools in the country right here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And I always thought, how it would
Pretty
be
good Catholic schools too, yeah.
if we loaned teachers and the professionals in the private schools to the public schools, and the public school children here to go to some of the private schools and see how we can have, instead of a divided lines.
I don't think teachers unions would like that very much.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the teachers unions, but I think we need, and if it wasn't for the teacher unions, you probably wouldn't have charter schools today. They were the first, they ended up getting on board in the very beginning. But sometimes people fight because they don't communicate with each other. And I think if you can communicate all sides together, having a good summit to flush out what people's arguments are and problems are, I think that could be helpful. But if you say, let's get rid of all charter schools and it's going to be public schools and that's it, it's proving that it's been challenging in Providence.
All right.
All of a sudden, you're going to say that the snap of the fingers is going to be good. I don't think you can do that.
Last questions on schools. You mentioned your quote, I'm going to quote, however, it will be difficult to maximize results without a predictable, sustained investment in our schools. Don't we already have that?
Well, that was somewhat funny. That was a disagreement that Gary and I had.
Okay.
Gary wanted to put an additional tax over a certain income to be dedicated towards that, and I wouldn't go along with that in the op-ed piece. So I said, let's do this and try to compromise it. Should there be some additional dollars, maybe just targeted for that? Yeah, but I'm not into tax. There's no saying.
Doesn't that go beyond money? I mean, is a little more money really going to make a difference? I mean, isn't it the structure of the curriculum and all that?
I don't know, but there's an old saying, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the man behind the tree. And so I think we're going to be entering an era where everybody's going to be trying to find that man or woman behind the tree and figure out how you get more taxes, not recognizing that's going to happen even more in Washington right now. So I don't think that in order to create jobs, we tax ourselves into having more jobs. I don't think that's how it's going to happen.
Well, that's a
We're gonna
great,
be a little smarter.
glad to hear you say that, because now I want, so the three things you mentioned, infrastructure and capital investing, that costs money. Digital technology access, that costs money, the way we talked about it. Maybe or not more funding for schools. If there was more funding, that costs money. Where does that come from? The co-author of your piece, Gary Sass, has been publicly advocating for a new wealth tax, which I would presume would pay for some of this stuff. You just said you don't think we can tax ourselves. So do you agree with the concept of a new wealth tax?
No, I
in
no,
the
I
state?
don't. I think you're gonna hurt business. I think you're gonna hurt business in Rhode Island, and I think companies are gonna say, why should I be here? I can go to another state. I go to Florida. Look, 250,000 people, 250,000 have moved out of New York, and they've gone into states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee. Why are they moving? Taxes.
Right.
If I moved to Florida right now, ran my business in Florida, I would save a great deal of money in taxes. But I was born in Rhode Island, I'm going to die in Rhode Island, and I'm not making a residence anywhere else. But sometimes government makes it tough to keep your loyalty. And I think instead of kicking the can on all these problems that we have, because somebody wants to try to get reelected and they keep on kicking the can, I think it's time to stop kicking the can and let's just fix the problems that we
So
have.
how do we pay for these things you talk about in your article, if not a new wealth tax? How do we, is it a bond? Is it debt? How do we pay for it?
Well, I think we're going to have to just do a whole analysis of where the dollars are being spent, and maybe some areas you get too much money going.
So you're saying basically smarter spending and prioritization of the money we already have.
I don't have the budget in front of me, but yes, that sounds good what you're saying. But the question is, everybody says what you just said.
Yeah,
Reprioritize,
that's right.
do this, right? Because nobody gets mad at you, right? I don't want anybody to get mad at me. So
That's for sure. You're
We'll do
exactly
zero
right
based-
on that.
we'll do zero-based budgeting. That sounds good too. I don't have the answer yet, but I know this, that you can't tax your way out if you want to create jobs, you want industry, and you want growth. That's just not going to happen. At the same time, you can't say you can't help the person that's got a mental illness. You can't take care of that person who's got a problem, who's homeless. Because if we as a government don't take care of those people, no one else is.
So you know what, Mayor Joe, you're going to make a very interesting candidate. It is pretty well known, and I think you've said it many times. You are considering a run for governor in Rhode Island in 2022, correct?
Yeah, totally, yes.
And I assume you would be running kind of as a moderate, whether that's, have you decided which party you would run in?
I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democratic National Committee man. Look, we're a big tent party. We have progressives, we have liberals, we have moderates, we have conservatives. Everybody thinks.
Now, moderate Democrats are not in vogue right now.
Well, I'm pretty moderate, and
Yeah,
it's
you
some
sound
areas
it.
that I'll go to the left, and other areas I'm going to stay in the center and tilt to the right. But that's me. I'm not going to try to take a poll and say, oh, I got to be this way.
But the Democrat Party is voting far progressive left. Could you survive a Democrat primary?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It all depends
Okay.
on who's running in that primary and everybody's positions. But I feel this, that if you're practical, if you're honest, if people know you're talking the truth, they're going to see right through that. If somebody's
Okay.
couching and taking these so-called lines, oh, I got this in the focus group or that in the poll, and I'll try to project myself this way, they can see through that. Because you know why? I did that years ago too.
All right, I've got, I want to ask you a question or two about Providence. We only got about 5 or 6 minutes, but I got one other item I want to bring up, sort of political, before we get to your thoughts on the city of Providence.
Yeah, anything you want.
Okay, great. So when I was advertising and you were coming on my show today, somebody sent me a letter, a copy of a letter apparently you sent out. I don't know if it was just to Republicans, this one was, but to candidates who had lost in the general election. You were basically encouraging them to keep up the fight and then the good work. What was your purpose, and how many, are you willing to talk about that?
Sure, I am. Absolutely. Look, I haven't been in,
Caused a little bit of a stir in certain circles, apparently.
well, I don't know if it has or it hasn't, and hope I did it for the right reasons.
What was that reason?
If when you lose, it's sure nice to get a letter to say that somebody just said to you, hey, you gave a good fight, good for you, don't give up. Remember what Teddy Roosevelt said, that being in the arena is a lot better than those
In the
poor
arena.
souls on the left just try to be bystanders watching what's going on. So yeah, I wrote to Democrats, I wrote to Republicans.
What kind of response have you gotten
Nice response.
from the candidates? Nice
People
response?
called me and thanked me. They said, gee, it meant a lot to them, because after you lose, you're yesterday's newspaper. Nobody cares about you.
Okay. All right. It's been a tough, especially tough year for the city of Providence, where you were formerly mayor and still work. And I know you have great love for the city as our state, between the coronavirus, the shutdown, summer riots, a recession, now we're back into a pause, and apparently even National Grid is tearing up the streets on South Main Street. Nobody can get in there. Holiday season is a big make or break. Just talk about what you've seen in recent years of the management of the city of Providence.
Well, let me say right now, 1 year has been taken away from our lives. All of us, no matter who we are, we've lost a year. And it's trying, it's challenging, and anxiety builds up. And quite frankly, the shopping season, you're not supposed to even go out. We're in a pause. I've seen so many restaurants go down the tube, so many people out of work. So the Providence Place Mall that at one
You
time,
support the pause?
I'm sorry,
Do you support the pause?
do I support the what? The
The
pause?
pause that we're currently in.
Oh, yeah, no, this is real. This is real what's out there. I mean, people that make fun of the mask and all that, I disagree with. Everybody's got their own opinion, but I want to wear the mask when I'm going out. When I have people around me, it's a respectful thing to do. I don't want to get this illness. And I don't want, and if I had it, I don't want to give it to anybody.
Should Mayor Laws have imposed a five-person gathering limit where the state has 10 or
It's-
more?
The state of Rhode Island encompasses areas like Tiverton and Boroughville and Exeter and Little Compton. Providence is a much different city. I don't want to second guess the mayor. He's been in a tough job. He and I don't always agree on many, many issues. But he's got a challenging job. I don't want to second guess the guy. Let him do what he can do to try to help his city.
Well, I am going to ask you to, maybe I won't call it second guessing, but he's put forth a concept that is rare, one of maybe only a handful of cities and mayors in the country, but he's suggesting that or the city of Providence, I assume, I think he's saying that should pay reparations to Black residents of the city.
Sometimes political people say things because they want to go in, they want to try to get support from the people that they're talking about. And the question is, if you're going to give money away, where are you getting the money from? And two, the Black community has gone through a lot. My son Joey said to me once, he said, Dad, he said, you're not Black, and when you walk down the street, people look at you one way, but if you're Black, they'll look at you a little bit different. And I listen to my younger children because they're out there and they're seeing these challenges every single day. Now, Lorza talking about doing what he's doing, I said to somebody, gee, we kind of have done that indirectly without saying it, where when we're hiring people, we have a percentage for minorities to try to get jobs. And hopefully, like in the police force, they should represent what the city is. And I put in programs, and every mayor after me, including Alonzo, always increased it to try to get more minority participation in the police department. When you have contracts, if it's building contracts or contracts, you have an RFP out, you have a set aside. So a lot of that has happened indirectly. More than anything else, maybe the mayor is just trying to say, maybe we should respect and understand the fight that a lot of these people these citizens and their ancestors.
Just a way to draw attention to the larger issue. Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. Look, what happened to that George Floyd? I don't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He got arrested, but there was a dumb cop that did what he did, and he set off this whole thing. And so Floyd, it became a symbol that I and everybody else is getting beat up on where they don't have to. And we've seen it all through. And even saw that poor kid, he's been in a coma here in Providence. He got hit
Yep.
on his motor
Yep.
scooter.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you, I sent his family some money. I feel bad. That shouldn't happen.
Very generous, very kind. Well, Joe Paolino, thank you for being my guest today. Let's do it again sometime, and when whether it's before or after you make an official announcement or not. I assume if you were to make an announcement, it would be after the new year, or
Yeah, it'll be after. What look, I'm going to look at it very practically. I want to make sure that if my kind of thinking is something that the people of Rhode Island want, I got to make sure that, is there a political highway to try to win this? I don't know if the governor is going to be going to Washington or if she's staying here.
Right,
There's so many different developments take
Right.
place. You focus group, as you know, you do polls and all that. But I can tell you that the desire, Bruce Southern used to have an old saying, first part of his life, he wanted to learn. Second part of his life, he wanted to earn. And then he wanted to serve the last part of his life. Mine is in 4. I learned, I served, I'm earning now. And if I could serve and make a difference and do something good, because I really care about Rhode Island, I'll do it. If I don't think it's feasible, I don't have to do it. Maybe somebody else could do it. But man, stop kicking the can on these problems. Let's face them. Let's face them head on and fix them.
That's an attitude and a philosophy we applaud you for. I thank you for being a guest on the show, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again.
By the way, I enjoyed watching Steve Erickson. He and I have, sparred back and forth. I kind of
He spars with everybody, I think.
I feel kind of bad about it, quite frankly, because I do have respect for him. We've just had some disagreements on some things. Sometimes your emotions get going. You say something here, and then
He's a real character, no question.
and go up. But I enjoyed watching him on your show.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
And I'll have just a few more comments for you on our show today. So, wow, 2 really, look, as advertised, these are discussions that you're not seeing in other parts of the media. And we're not really even a media entity. We're not journalistically trained, but see, the thing is, on our show, In The Dugout, we're not afraid. We're not beholden to a narrative. Oh, yes, we promote free market, but we're willing to listen. And I learned some things. If what Steve Erickson said today is true, then I learned some things about some of these people who are complaining about the mail ballot process in our state. Now, when it comes to Joe Paolino, man, that's an intriguing political figure right there. Many of my sources have told me that you heard him say on this show that he's a Democrat. And he is. I think he's the national committee man by title, which is there's a national committee man and national committee woman, I think, in the state. He's the national committee man for the Democrat Party in the state of Rhode Island, and he's a longtime Democrat. But my sources tell me that if he does make a run, which is why I asked him that question, he probably couldn't survive a Democrat primary, which is increasingly voting far left and progressive left these days, and that he may indeed run as an independent. Hey, Governor Chafee won recently as an independent, right? So we will see how that happens. He may announce a run for governor without announcing his party affiliation. That's happened before too. But either way, he's an intriguing candidate. You heard him say, I don't believe in just taxing for the sake of taxing the wealth as if it's some kind of identity politics game. He recognizes the high taxes hurt industry. They hurt our state, and they do, as our senator has been saying for years. High taxes he talked about brain power, causes investors, it causes wealthy people to leave our state and go to Florida, go to Texas, go to North Carolina, go to Tennessee, like he just said on this show. But yet he's very liberal on other issues. He apparently likes a lot of government spending, a lot of government debt. That's okay. But what I'm saying is he's an intriguing guy, a little bit of right, a little bit of left. Can he find a niche to win as governor? He even seemed open, which I'm sure won't endear him to his teachers union friends, which I'm sure he is friends with. I don't say that in a pejorative way, but he seemed even open to the idea of some kind of private school choice. So we'll have to nail him down on that a little bit more in future visions of the show once he officially is a candidate, and we'll have to take positions on these. Right now, it's fair for him to think about it and wait a little bit. So, boy, I'll tell you what, that might have been the most informative show we've had between the Board of Elections board member and the former mayor of the city. And that's what we're here. That's what In the Dugout is all about, is to bring you the stories and the information, to clarify misinformation where we can. I think we did that today. And I hope we'll be doing more of it. So for In the Dugout, Mike Stenhouse,